we have a great opportunity to support our student learning with Classworks. If you used a geoboard with students to represent fractions, you wouldn't just give them the board and a bunch of rubber bands. You would talk about how to use the geoboard and perhaps write an example showing what was on the geoboard and why they used those rubber bands in that way to represent their fractions. We need to use this intentionality when introducing mini lessons to our students in Classworks. In looking at my students' individualized learning, I notice that one of my students has 50% for mathematics. I click the active ILP button to the left of the 50%. Looking closely, I see that NWEA, Operations in Algebraic Thinking, has the only score of 50%. I click that NWEA Operations in Algebraic Thinking link. I notice that the student for Properties of Multiplication only took 7 seconds to go through the mini lesson and received 65% on the Properties of Multiplication activity and 50% on the quick quiz. You should have already modeled the best practice for viewing a mini lesson with your students. This includes using a notebook to write down notes, just as if the student was taking a lesson with you as a group in the class. And this would be a good time to review that concept one-on-one with this one child. Your students should have a binder for classwork, and you may have the Success Notebook front page on that binder. Take a look with your student. What skill do they believe they're working on? And are their Classworks goals too hard or just right for them? Are they rushing because they're using Classworks like a video game, just trying to get through the levels quickly? On the bottom of the page, you might want to suggest that they keep notes from their mini lesson, and also to write notes in the notebook about when they feel they need help from a teacher about a term or an idea. Learning from a computer is very much different from watching a YouTube video for fun. You'll want to have a notebook. Model for your students how to watch a piece of the mini lesson and then take notes. Follow that up by having the students watch the mini lesson and suggest the notes they would take.
Order property. Multiply factors in any order. The product is always the same.
Make sure that the students understand that ultimately they're in charge of their learning. They can pause, they can silence the computer, and they can turn it on again. The computer may be speaking too fast for me to write down notes, and that's okay. I can wait until it's done speaking and then write down as much as I'm ready to write. I'm going to write down Properties of Multiplication because that's my section of work. I'm also going to write down order property. Multiply factors in any order. The product is always the same. I've heard that before, but I didn't remember that. Next, I noticed that there are 2 different sets of bananas with a button that says Show Me. I should explore that to see what else the mini lesson has to teach me. I might need to ask my teacher for help. If I don't know what the word factors mean, or I don't know what the word product means, I should find that out. If I do know what a product and a factor are, I don't need to write that in my notepad. I need to think about what pictures I'm seeing and what numbers go with those pictures. How does it relate to the words multiply factors in any order, the product is always the same? As an adult, you're viewing this video and you probably realize that if the speaking is too fast, you need to hit the pause button. That's the kind of information we need to pass on to our students. Returning to the example, I see 2 bunches of 3 bananas. 2 times 3 equals 6 bananas. It may be enough to draw the pictures and write the numbers under it, or I may want to write it out as a sentence. 2 bunches of 3 bananas equals 6 bananas. Now I'm going to look at the next set of pictures. There are 3 bunches with 2 bananas each. 3 times 2 equals 6. No matter which way I write it, 3 times 2 or 2 times 3, the product is the same. Students can also benefit from creating their own example before moving on with the work. I may need to click Show Me many more times until I understand that 3 times 2 and 2 times 6, the product is the same, 6. I may need to only click it once to get it right. But I want to make sure that I understand what's being shown. When I'm ready, I can write my notes about the grouping property and then work through the Show Me example for this. It may take a while to click through to understand the example that 3 times 2, which is 6, times 2 equals 12. And 2 times 2 equals 4. So 3 times 4 equals 12. So keep using click again until you can understand what it means by the product is still the same no matter how it's grouped. When I'm ready, I'll move on to the zero property, writing my notes and using the show me example.
0 times 4 equals blank.
The computer read those math statements to me. I can think about what I believe the answer is going to be, write the problems and the answers in my notepad, and then click to show the answer and compare.
0 times 4 equals 0.
It's much more productive for the student, and they're able to write down in their notebook when they feel they need questions answered and about what.
Two times 1 equals blank.
Write your notes, write down the example problems. If you think you have the right answer, write it down in your notebook. Then compare it to what the program shows.
2 times 1 equals 2. 8 times 1 equals 8.
We're not done yet. Now we'll click the yellow arrow to learn a little bit more and do some practice.
Drag the digits to show the product.
Can you use your mouse to solve these problems? Do all the problems. Now move on to the next review.
0.
If you get it wrong, try again.
4. 6.
The review is a great time to make sure that you have your notes together and that you understand what you just practiced on the first 2 pages. This whole process is probably going to take you 5 or 10 minutes. Once you do, you're ready to work on the practice problems and then the mini quiz. If you don't feel like you've done a good job on the practice of the mini quiz, you can come back to this mini lesson and review it again. A similar process should be followed for using the gaming sections, helping the students understand that they can run a game multiple times for different practice with the different types of content, as well as understanding how to use the notebook for taking the mini quiz. Encourage your students to understand that the quiz isn't timed. It's a great time to write down the questions and their response so that they can reflect on their learning at the end of each mini lesson.